Have you ever wondered when you're struggling with anxiety and you feel like you're making progress, you're getting better, and then all of a sudden you get hit really hard. It's like all your anxiety just comes back. It's almost like it doesn't want you to recover. And when that happens, you just totally lose control. You feel like everything that you've worked for is just down the drain. You're back to square one and you're just not sure how to get out of this. You feel like this is one of the things that's really slowing you down in recovery. I know this because this is exactly what I struggled with. I would be doing exactly what I essentially teach, and then I'd get hit with a really bad day, and it felt like I made absolutely no progress. And what would I end up doing? I'd end up going back to my old habits. I'd start self-sabotaging, feeling guilty about myself, and really not really making progress. So really what I want to talk about in this video is, why do bad days happen? And what really causes them, and more importantly, what you can do to actually have the bad days work in your favor to help you essentially fully recover. Now, if you don't know who I am, my name is Shaan. I struggled with anxiety, panic attacks, derealization, depersonalization years ago. I managed to fully overcome it, and now I get the great fortune of helping others. So pay attention to this video. This is gonna be really informative, especially if you're somebody who's been getting better, but keep hitting this wall, keep hitting this roadblock, and you're not really sure how to get around it. So stay tuned. So in the anxiety community, we have this term. The term is called a setback. Now, when you're struggling with anxiety, you're gonna have good days, you're gonna have bad days. The good days are gonna be a little bit better. The anxiety isn't as terrible. You know, it feels like you're barely getting by. But then you have the bad days where, you know, anxiety is a little bit overwhelming. It's a little hard. It kind of stresses you out. What a setback is essentially when you feel like you're making progress. You actually think, hey, I may have this under control. I may be able to get out of this. I may be able to actually have anxiety work for me, not against me. But then all of a sudden you get hit, and that's what we call a setback. Now, a setback is where you feel like you've made great progress. You're doing really well, and then all of a sudden it feels like you get hit with a really bad day. You feel like you've gotten hit so hard, it's like you've made no progress at all. It's like everything you work towards automatically just comes tumbling down, that it doesn't matter. And then you start thinking, maybe I can never get out of this. Maybe this is something I can never fully get out of. And because I thought I was making progress, but I'm not. Like, I just got hit with this hard day. You're trying to figure out, what was it? Was it something I ate yesterday? Was it because I didn't sleep well? Like, what happened? And really what I want to talk about is, when this happens, the first important thing to realize is, why do setbacks happen? And most of the time, a setback is actually a part of recovery. So when you go through recovery, and I document this too, essentially when I was struggling with anxiety, panic attacks, derealization, depersonalization, when I was recovering, I thought I was making really great progress. And then I would get hit with a setback, and a setback would just totally destroy me. I felt like I made no progress. And then what I would essentially do is pretty much self-sabotage. I'd go back to assurance seeking. I would start going to doctors trying to figure out what's wrong. I'd start going on Google. I'd start going on forums, just trying to figure it all out. And what happened was that those setbacks really forced me to kind of tumble down into my anxiety getting worse. So the first important thing to really understand is that setbacks are actually a part of recovery. And I document this heavily in how I fully recovered. And if you guys want to know how I recovered, how I get other people to recover, I'm just going to put the link down below. It's just pretty much a report. It shows you step by step of my program. I used to be pretty protective of this. I didn't really share it quite often, but I've had so many people ask me, you know, how do you recover? I've just kind of laid it out, and I've done it in a written form because I just feel like explaining it in a written form is easier to understand. So essentially, when you're dealing with a setback, you have to understand that setbacks are a part of recovery. And it's not just a part of it, it's vital to recovery. The way around this is to recognize that it's not actually the setback that throws you back. It's not the setback that kind of sabotages your recovery. The first thing is to understand that just because you have a setback, that doesn't mean that you haven't made progress. It's very easy to think that when all of your anxiety symptoms hit all of a sudden, that you just haven't made any progress. But the truth is, you have. All that's happened is that your nervous system is kind of still on edge, it's irritated, and as it's coming back to baseline, the way you were before you had anxiety, or you know, when you don't have anxiety, sometimes it just overshoots. Just because you had a setback, that doesn't mean you haven't made any progress. Now, the second thing is that setbacks are a part of recovery. It's not the setback that throws you off. It's actually your response to it. I talked about this and I said, this is the difference between reacting and responding. Somebody who's struggling with anxiety, when they hit a setback, they just react. They go back to their old selves. They kind of go back into these behaviors that aren't really productive in their recovery process. Somebody who's on their way to seriously overcome, they start recognizing that those reactions aren't appropriate. They start responding. So when they hit a setback, they essentially acknowledge the setback. They realize it's part of recovery, and they don't self-sabotage. They don't go back on forums. They don't try to figure this out. They just know, look, setbacks are going to happen. It's just part of it. I'm just going to keep moving forward, and I'm going to focus on the right action. What happens is over time, the setbacks, they actually become less and less in the intensity as you start recovering. So the setbacks become less intense, and the gap between the setbacks get wider and wider. This is how recovery looks like. You're essentially getting better. You have good days, you have some bad days, and then you get hit with a setback. You accept the setbacks, you still follow the correct steps to fully overcome, and the setback doesn't last as long. Furthermore, the next setback that hits you won't hit you as hard. And that's how it is. That's why in the initial parts of recovery is normally the hardest and where most people mess up. As you start recovering, you realize what's working, and you start developing confidence. So that's essentially how a setback works. If you want to know more, if you're like, Shaan, that makes so much more sense. I fully understand. Like, how do you help people fully overcome? Like, how can I learn more? So if you want to know more, I have a private Facebook group, and these people, it's different than any other group. Most forums, people are kind of story topping each other or kind of scaring other members, trying to figure out why these symptoms are happening, this and that. In this private Facebook group, I'm really showing people step by step how to fully overcome this once and for all. We're not really caring about assurance seeking. We're not really focused on short-term comfort. We're focused on long-term freedom. So we're only allowing people in this group that are very serious about overcoming this. They don't want this to be a problem where it kind of affects their quality of life. They're serious about fully overcoming. So if that's you, hit that link down below. When you hit that link, it's going to ask you 3 questions. It's very, very important that you answer those 3 questions. We want as many people in as possible, but we're also trying to maintain the integrity of the group. We want this to be a group where, it's productive. It's really helping people. We don't want people to, feel worse from the group. We want to foster them in their recovery. So hit that link, make sure to answer those 3 questions, and I'll see you guys inside.